So what is this historic indicator? Well, there are many. There are many that are showing that Bitcoin is ready for a huge move, a historic move, you could argue. Okay, that will point us to 190,000, which is actually very conservative. So many other predictions show that we're going to end up anywhere from 200 to $300,000. So actually, 190,000 price prediction for next year is actually super conservative versus some of the other predictions out there. Now, why? Why are we going to go up there? Well, Bollinger Bands. Bollinger Bands. So if you're looking at how tight the Bollinger Bands are, the bandwidth is as low as it's ever been in history. We saw this one time in 2015. Yeah, 2015. And then one time in the bottom of 2023, and now we're seeing it once again. Okay, so to put things into perspective, Bitcoin in 2015, that's when it fell down to $160. $160. That's the last time we saw the bandwidth this narrow for Bollinger Bands. And then we saw it in the bottom of 2023 when Bitcoin fell to 16,000. And now we're seeing the same thing happen in 2024, but the difference is Bitcoin is at $64,000, $65,000. So again, we haven't seen this since Bitcoin was at $160 and Bitcoin was at $15,000. Now we're seeing it at $65,000. So obviously much higher in price, but the performance that comes afterwards could be similar, could be very similar. Maybe not tens of thousands of percents now, maybe not even thousands of percent, but just a few 100% that could follow this will send Bitcoin towards 190,000 and beyond, right? And this is what it's looking like in terms of that squeeze that's happening and the bandwidth. So that's looking pretty darn good. Let's talk about inflows. Yesterday we had another inflow, another good inflow day. Not as good as the day before. We only had positive, net positive of 53 million. Hey, but it's still 53 million. But here's the thing. Two things to note. One, massive outflow from Grayscale once again, 53.9 million. Okay, no idea why. When we have bad days, Grayscale continues to sell. You can see most of the red on this chart is all on Grayscale, right? Since the beginning of July to now, they have been selling and selling and selling and selling some more. Again, there's something going on with Grayscale. And it makes me almost a little bit worried about ETH ETFs coming up because they're converting their ETH trust into an ETH spot ETF. And they're keeping their fees high as well. So is that, we already saw this playbook from Grayscale. They knew there was going to be massive selling. That's why they kept their fees high. And they're doing the same thing with their ETH spot ETF. So I'm wondering if they're anticipating massive sells or outflows of ETH too. So that's something to pay attention to next week. But regardless, the other ETFs, they're soaking it up like BlackRock, another 110 million inflow, right? BlackRock does not care. Does not care. They will just take in all the Bitcoin they can. Or maybe they control Grayscale and they're forcing Grayscale to sell so they can inflow. I don't know. I would not be surprised if Grayscale's owned by BlackRock at this point. Okay. Well, what I do know is this. BlackRock is not going away. They will continue to load up Bitcoin as much as they can while it's still cheap. Even when Bitcoin's not cheap, they'll probably still be loading up on Bitcoin. But still, they will continue to load up. This is what I've been saying ever since the ETF started debuted. Ever since the volume started flowing into the ETFs, I'm like, pay attention. This is what Wall Street wants. This is what they got. They're putting billions upon billions upon billions. And of course, the leader now is BlackRock because of how bullish Larry Fink is, right? This is not going to stop. This is not going to stop. Now, moving on, we have this chart right here for those of you guys that like charts. We have bounced off of this important resistance. I don't know what that is. I think that's the 200 DMA. 200, no, this one is the 450 if I'm looking very close. This is the 450 DMA. And you can see this is a pretty bullish sign, right? So short term, we have this bullish momentum back. Where are we going to bounce to? Well, you could see the last 2 times we did this where we breached below and bounced above, we had pretty good returns, right? And this time around, it's going to be no different. Here's another look at that, okay? And in both cases, these guys are predicting that we're going to 100,000 plus. We just have to break through. We just have to break through our previous high of $73,000. And I do think it's going to happen next week. I even said that last night. And I said it yesterday morning. I think something's being planned right now. I think leading up to Bitcoin conference, Bitcoin is going to pump to a new high. Could be just barely above 73, 74, 75. I think that's in the works. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think something's brewing right now. That's for sure. And long term, this is what it looks like. All right, this is the last thing I'll say about Bitcoin. But if you look at every single cycle, every time Bitcoin broke through this important like B wave or B level, which is the second top, basically, Bitcoin has a hard time staying above. And then afterwards, after some time, it just keeps on going, right? So it's kind of the same thing here. But, 2021 was different because our B wave was higher than the A wave or the A top, or the first top was lower than the second top, which normally doesn't happen. All the previous cycles, the first top is always higher than the second top. And that's because we had SBF and FTX. They were heavily manipulating the market. And a lot of people think that the only reason we fell to 28,000 before rising it back up, again, was due to FTX. So that's the reason why, right? But you know what? Doesn't matter. That's the past. This is now the present. And our current cycle looks a lot similar to the 2016 cycle than the 2020 cycle. And we are moving exactly the same way. And look at what happened in 2016 and 2017 and that glorious top at the end. I think we're going to see something very, very similar this cycle.